Hello. There's people still filing in, but I think we're starting. Hi, everyone. Hello. Hope you're all well. Hope you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable, just think it could be worse. You could be wearing full armor. Hi, I'm Aoife. I'm Senior Communications Developer at Larian, and this is Baldur's Gate 3, a retrospective, which is just a fancy way of saying Baldur's Gate 3 has been out a year now, and we want to celebrate that fact. So, for the next hour, maybe a little bit more, we'll be chatting to some of the very talented people who have made the game. And, you know, at least things have stayed interesting because it was an interesting journey from conception to today. And because we know you all have a lot on your mind and, well, in it, we're going to be taking some questions from the BG3 Discord, and then there's going to be time for a very short audience Q&A at the end, so maybe have your questions prepped or start thinking about them now. All right, so shall we introduce our panelists? Let's start over here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nick the Druid, I guess. On Baldur's Gate 3, besides working as the cow, I also was the lead systems designer. And together with a team of designers, we worked on classes, spells, magic items, some gameplay systems, and balancing.
Hi, I'm Alena. I didn't prepare a joke, so yeah. I'm art director at Larian, and I used to be lead character artist on Baldur's Gate 3.
Hold on. 1 second.
It's all right, we got time.
All right.
Elegant.
Sorry about that. Gracious. I'm Sven. I'm the game director on. I was the game director on Baldur's Gate 3.
And I always have to follow him, which makes me unimpressive. I'm Adam. I'm the writing director at Larian.
Woo!
And then I have to follow him.
It's easy.
Oh, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Davis. I'm cinematic artist. People also know me as Mavis. I worked on a lot of the cinematics that you saw throughout BG3. There's one in particular that got a bit of a reputation, so...
And I'm sorry, we're forgetting a very special guest here. This is Felix. Hi.
Yeah. He did a lot of motion capture.
You're going to have to be gentle with him. He's a little bit hungover today. All right, so a year on, here we are, celebrating the incredible achievement that was Baldur's Gate 3. By any standard, this game was a huge success. I mean, you've got an incredible community. You've got yes, absolutely. You've got a truckload of awards. You've got recognition, not just in the games industry, but beyond. So I want to ask you all, what about that journey from conception to today surprised you the most?
Looking at me.
I'm sorry. Any of you can answer. Sven, come on. Let's hear from you.
I couldn't hear the question.
Oh, well, this is great. We're off to a great start.
We have the feedback going on.
What about the journey surprised you the most?
Oh, so the surprise of the journey. Oh, wow. I think the reaction of the community, to be honest, was the biggest thing for all of us, I would say. Yeah. We were incredibly impressed by how you all embraced the game and how positive you were throughout actually the entire journey, even when we were spending quite a long time in early access, a few years more than we expected. So I think that's probably the biggest surprise that I take away from it. I don't know about you.
Yeah, for me it was, I think back to, we were at PAX, right, announcing the early access launch and showing the game for the first time. And I remember it feels so long ago, being really scared that we weren't real time with pause. And that felt like it could kill us. It was like, you know, there's this entire community of people who've been waiting for a Baldur's Gate sequel for so long. And we were like, and ours is turn-based, and is that going to be okay? And we knew it was good. We believed in it. I mean, Nick and his team did a brilliant job with it. But it feels so long ago being so scared of that and thinking, how will people react? And we always trusted we put the game in front of people and let them play it, then they'll be able to judge it.
Yeah.
So maybe to add to that, actually, because another big surprise was also the community, but then in a different version. When we showed the game for the first time, it was here actually at, no, it was in Boston. It was at PAX.
Boston,
it was PAX Boston, at PAX East. And we are developers, so we assumed that everybody was going to see, oh, they still have a lot of work, so this is where they start, this is not where they end. And I remember we were showing it to a crowd, and we got a lot of engagement from the crowd. And so we felt really positive when we got out of that room. And so we went, and it was also being streamed. So we came out of the room, and I got a phone call from my mother. Says, "What have you done?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she says, "People are so angry at you." And so this was obviously because we started from the Divinity Original Sin 2 engine, and people were saying like, "Hey, this is a Divinity 2 Original Sin ripoff." And I remember all of us being super surprised by that.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that I really admire about Larian and the game's development process as a whole is how candid the team always has been, just about the mistakes made along the way and like the lessons learned. What were some of the toughest moments for you all, pre-early access, I guess, of that journey?
Yeah, I'd say, well, for us, like, when we started properly working on cinematics, like the tools that we use, that we had for the release, they did not exist when we started. So it was a case of like, you know, sitting down and just imagining how it would go so far down the line. Like you can't picture it now. The amount of progression that was made over that time, it really was striking. And it meant, obviously, as well, because we're in the iteration phase during early access, there was, you know, as the players, they could see it themselves as well, you know, as the cinematics grew and became much more refined, and the quality just kind of went up and up and up. So I'd say that was like a great thing to see.
The good news is the writing team knew exactly how to write a cinematic game. We didn't. We were giving them stuff that was absolutely written in a style that didn't give them the visual space to be creative at first. So we had to learn how to work with them, to let them do their best work. And then for the artists, they put the camera in places you didn't expect it to go, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, actually, like during early access, we weren't sure as well if cinematics going to happen at all, and we had a couple of proof of concept, and we were still like, okay, are we doing it? Are we not doing it? And then we decided to do it, and we decided that the camera is going to be quite far away from the character, and we're never going to zoom in as close. And the next thing we know, they're zooming in on a goblin toe.
Yeah. Because there was a moment when we were actually thinking of making the dialogues first person, so we tried that out, but that quickly got shut down. It was, I think it's probably true to say that the biggest challenge was the fact that this game was going to be cinematic, and we had no idea what we were doing, because we were about 120 people, and we ended up with 400, and a lot of that was driven by the sheer amount of cinematics that we had to put inside of the game. So that was it was quite a jump for us, and dealing with that was really, really, really complicated.
Well, so, I mean, the early stages of the game weren't just about designing the game, they were also about adapting the pre-existing rules, lore, and mechanical parameters of Dungeons & Dragons. What were some of the biggest challenges there?
Well, we thought the job of designers was going to be easy, because we have a design document that's just the printed books, right? So it felt like, well, it's going to be as easy as just giving the book to the programmers. Let's just get it out very, very quickly. And before you know it, we're deep down in community forums, reading through people arguing what exactly was meant by a certain passage and how crit fishing on a paladin is totally legitimate. And we essentially had to recreate ascended bugs because that's what everybody expected. So that was a really long journey. And it was great that we had a lot to draw from. So D&D has a wonderful community of creators, of people who think very hard about the rules, who try them out. We literally went through forums looking through homebrew rules and seeing like, okay, this is a rule that players very frequently change this way. Like the rule where you cannot cast like a full action spell and a bonus action spell on the same turn. That's just something that frequently just fell on by the wayside. We're like, okay, so we're not crazy. Some people do it, so maybe we can try it as well. This is really great to see this design process in the wild and then kind of being a part of it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I think one of the things that struck me the most was how very specific we had to go for every single spell almost, because when we worked on Original Sin 2, we had a system where we could reuse a lot of code, and here we almost, for every single spell, it had to be a separate system, which added tremendously to the workload that came out of it. It was that was quite a journey. And then when we got it into early access actually for the first time, and we had our version of what we said, these are our homegrown rules, and then we saw the community who didn't agree with that. That was also a very interesting moment in our careers.
And do you think maybe Baldur's Gate 3 has influenced Dungeons & Dragons going forward?
Well, I mean, yes. I don't know, I mean, like we just heard that the introduction of weapon masteries. Weapon masteries is something that Nick and his team worked on a long time, just trying to figure out how to make the fighter more interesting from the get-go. That's how that entire discussion. We used to call them weapon actions, I think.
Yeah, weapon actions is what we internally call them.
So there's been a bunch of things that influenced it, I think.
What were some early concepts from each of your departments that didn't make it or were changed for the final game? I mean, we did mention the cinematic camera, of course, but are there any other examples of it?
Oh, there were a bunch of it. Let's see.
Oh, Carla, obviously.
Yeah, no, there was. So the game was much bigger originally. In our heads, you were going to be traveling. You were going to have so many more regions to go to. But then as we started exploring the density, which is always a journey when you're making a game, the density that we needed to make the game interesting, we realized we're spending so much time on every single square meter of this world, we have to make it smaller. And so that actually it slowed us down tremendously. And then what Adam mentioned also was once you started looking at how cinematics interfered with the actual gameplay, we had very long...
again.
Sorry?
Us again.
No, but we had really long discussions about it, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it was, from a gameplay point of view, you wanted to be able to approach something like the Goblin Village, for instance, from any direction. But from a cinematics point of view, you wanted to make it dramatic, and so, but you never knew where the player was going to come, you never knew who was going to be dead, you never knew what the player was going to be doing, you didn't know how many characters were going to come. So that introduced a lot of things. So as a result of that, we had some darlings that we needed. Oh, we had a cover system also, remember that?
Yeah, we really experimented quite a bit with it because it's part of the D&D rule set, but we just found so many problems with how it works in 3D from top-down camera. But otherwise, I would say for gameplay, we only grew. We added a subclass at release for everybody. The reaction system was put in place purely because community really wanted it. That's a really good example of what we added in early access that we really didn't plan. We really hope that we're not gonna just get away with not pausing the game because it's so difficult technically, and things like sound really hates when you stop things and you have to, like, what do you do with sound? You know, you're casting Fireball, there's now nice going on. And then gameplay says, like, now we need to pause. It doesn't work this way. But yeah, I think for us it was just continuous, like more.
We have to talk about the bear in the room. I mean, I know it's mentioned a lot, but it really does represent, you know, a turning point in the trajectory of how the game was talked about. Mavis, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, so that one came about. That was an interesting one, I would say.
Did you get a call from your mother?
I did show it to her the next day after the stream, the panel from hell, and I remember her words. She was like, "That's weird." Very supportive though. So, no, I remember talking about like it was signified a kind of an upward turn in the momentum towards launch of the game, I think. And what makes it even better was I had no idea that it was going to get shown at that panel from hell. I remember we were watching it in the Dublin office, and you had just shown the Karlach romance.
Yeah.
And I remember it was you, Adam, you were on stage and you're like, "We've shown you one romance scene, now let's show you another." And everyone in the office, no one really copped it. I immediately knew. And I was sitting next to Sinead Brady, our VO producer, and she was like, "Oh, maybe it's Gail's romance, you know, in the
knows
nice
us too well."
And I was sitting next to her, and I turned, and I just said, "They're doing the bear." And she was like, "Yes, they are. They're going to do the bear." And then the scene started, and everyone in the room just turned and looked at me, and I was just like, "Oh." But yeah, to see the reception it got after that was just like, it was crazy. Like, it was the first thing that I worked on, you know, to take off like that, in that way. And yeah, I'm really happy with how the community took to it.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, I remember when we were doing... We were doing the panel from Hell stream, and so the bear scene had just shown, and I saw the publishing team. They were super excited, and they were yelling, "We got banned on TikTok!" Knowing that it was going to get quite some attention.
But for real, like, was there ever any hesitancy to actually doing it? Because it was going to cause quite a stir.
There was actually some debate just before the show also, because we wanted it to be chosen by the audience, so we didn't know what they were going to pick. We were actually more uncomfortable about the other part.
It's spicier.
Yes,
the non-bear version would have got us banned from more than TikTok.
So there was quite some debate, but then we said, okay, this is what the game is, right? And I mean, this clearly says it's a mature game. I mean, it's funny, so we'll just go for it. And then it got picked up, and it became rather interesting.
Yeah.
What the reaction was.
It's actually because Matt mentioned that we showed the Karlak scene as well, and we did talk about that too. We wanted to show the breadth and diversity of romance in the game, so we wanted to show that there were different kinds of moments. Because I love the burst scene. I think it's fantastic. I think it's incredible. But we didn't want to be, you know, romance is just this to us. Yeah. We wanted to show the breadth of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, the team's openness, this scene and other things aside, has really helped give insight into the complex development of any game, how complex it can be, and how making even the most successful game is often 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The other way around, reverse that. But has it been difficult to maintain that level of openness as the game has, you know, continued to flourish and the team has, well, been like under more attention, I guess?
There's definitely more pressure, and we certainly get a lot more feedback than we used to, but we're trying to just remain who we were when we started out. I mean, it worked for us. I mean, like, so we know that we can fall back to where we were when nobody knew about us, so this is but I don't think we can make it any other way. I mean, the development culture at Larian is really very open and very introspective about, like, what are we fucking up, how we can do it better.
And the panels from Hell were a huge part of that as well. I mean, they're always fun to watch people getting turned into cows and etc.
And then the opposite way.
And the opposite, absolutely. But how has the success for Baldur's Gate 3 set Larian up for what's next? I mean, you've got more studio space, more, like, this team is bigger now. What can we look forward to?
Well, I mean, so when we started, we were about 100 people, and so we grew to 400 people. We had to learn a lot of new processes, things that we didn't realize we needed. Especially, I mean, cinematics obviously was a big part in it, but also we started adding so much permutations and so many dialogue options that we needed tools to be able to handle this. So we got a lot better at handling our own chaos, but really only to be able to do more chaos in the future. So, for instance, the thing you're referencing, we now built a large recording studio with multiple studios where we can record a lot simultaneously. And the reason we do that is because we know we change our mind very often, and we want to adapt to the feedback we get from players, which means that you have to do a lot of recording near the end when the game is fully playable. I mean, one of the huge problems that you get with an RPG is that it's only fun when there's so many systems that are ready. For a long time, it's a very boring thing because it only works when everything fits like clockwork. And so you need to be able to continue to adapt rapidly, even if your production values are high, which is the case in BG3, and certainly for the next thing that we're going to be making. So we picked up really a lot. It was a really huge learning process. And the funny thing is that we just, like, even despite all these things, we just keep on running into trouble with whatever new things we're just starting to do. All the new trouble.
And we wouldn't change it for anything. Right, let's have some questions from Discord. So, from Nay, I really love the descriptions under each item. Some are funny, others reference the lore of D&D. How did you come up with all of these little texts? How long did it take you, and which ones are your favorite?
So the non-vocalized texts, so I always call them readables, they're really good fun to write because there's less pressure. They don't need to be recorded, they don't need to go through cinematics, so it's actually like a little palate cleanser at the end of a day often that you write those. I do remember one day where we had to write 20 cheeses, and that wasn't a great day. Trying to make cheese interesting over and over again. Shout out to anyone who enjoyed them. And then, but you're also trying to get across lore, so it is actually a very useful tool for people who want to engage with it. So you can put in the details that the people who really care will dig into. There's a lot of little bits of backstory and some pretty emotional bits in there as well. There's a lot of stuff in the epilogue. We had a lot of fun there because we had the mailbox where you can catch up on everyone at the end. So it's very useful for that. But it's a completely different type of writing. So I think for any writer, it's nice to have, I get to write something where all the other teams don't need to be aware of it straight ahead of time. You know, it's a little bit of freedom there, so they're a lot of fun. Yeah.
Nice. From Proxygate Tactician, which cutscene in the game took the most time to create, and which is the team the most proud of?
Combat Over, I would say.
Oh, Jesus.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, anyway, specifically, because that was the sequence at the end of the game. And basically all our permutations that we have at the end of the game, well, they have to end up somewhere, and they all end up in this one single file.
It's like looking into the eye of God looking at that dialogue file. Yeah. It's crazy.
If anyone remembers, I think there was a post made on Twitter, and it was a shot of the dialogue file, and it was Rafiki superimposed on top of it. That was that scene, and that took quite a few months of work from multiple artists. It was that big that we had to actually split it up between people to work on the different chunks of it. And I think it came together, like that was, we're in the lead up to release, and we had to get it all in, and I think we did a good job in getting it all working and structured in the way that we wanted. And we will never do it like that again.
Spoiler, we will.
So, because that dialogue, that was an entire scripting team from January onwards, all the way till release, and that was the only thing they did.
And shout out to my lead writer, Crystal, who spent a lot of time on that dialogue and is a hero. The coronation scene, Gortash and Ravengard, that was a real tricky one as well, which I don't think came out as well as it could have done, and that's probably my fault. It usually is. But that one had so many complications in it. We try to make sure the dialogue is something that you can follow very easily. So you can read it, you see what happens, you listen to it, and you go out of it and you go, okay, I know where to go next. I understand what the plot beat was. I understand the character motivation. That one had so much in it. Gortash is telling you so much, and I think the writing's very good. I think Jason Isaacs is fantastic, but there was so much happening in it. So it went through a lot of different processes, different iterations.
Yes, Chad. Next question is from Satan. Thank you for your support. I recently discovered that in the first camp there are chairs hidden underneath some scenery objects to simulate sitting on them for the tiefling party, for example. Would love to hear about other such workarounds. There's a lot of faking going on in the background, and it's super interesting.
Chairs are just magic. We use it for everything. We have people like hanging. It's actually an invisible chair with a special animation for sitting. So essentially anything where a character is attached to anything, that's a chair. Our scripters are just chair masters. There's a lot more chairs than you think there is.
Any other ones?
Well, maybe helmet hair was one of them, right? I guess it's like a system that we introduced. it's kind of faking, but then again, so to be able to preserve your hair type, we came up with a system where we would customly make hair of each type. So like you have wavy, curly, afro hair, straight. And like we would put it in every helmet. So when the character wears a helmet, then it would know which hair type you have, and then you would preserve your curls. But yeah, obviously it's not your hair. It's a touch to a helmet. Yeah, sorry.
Next question is for you, Alena, from Kotatsu. What advice do you have for newbie concept artists trying to break into the industry despite its current state? Anything you wish you could have told yourself when you were starting out?
Yeah, so we see a lot of concept artists who are starting out who are really focusing about like on the polish and the quality of the polish of their work. But what we want to see and what we're most interested in is the ideas. So if you're starting out as an artist, it doesn't matter if you're a concept artist or any other type of artist, we wanted to see fresh things that we haven't seen before. We wanted to see quick iterations, explorations. We don't want people to just spend hours and hours trying to get like, the material of the metal, right? Like to paint it. So yeah, that would be my main one. And I guess, kind of looking back at, my career journey or journey as an artist, I think it's very important to get the philosophy right. And I think at Larian, we try to encourage people to think about the game, right? And the game is the focus, and all the good things come from there, like the decision that you make, if you base them from the point of, is it going to be fun for the players? Is it going to be good for the game? Will players enjoy wearing this outfit or looting this weapon? Is it going to bring them joy? And then if the answer is yes, then it really helps you navigate those things and then make the right steps.
All right, the next question is for Adam from Skip Jump, I'm guessing that. What works did you take inspiration from when crafting the narratives? Did any specific piece of media spark your writing?
I'm going to shock you. So Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 were pretty big inspirations.
Heard it here first, folks.
So, I mean, it's going to differ for every writer on the team. So my philosophy of writing is an art, but it's also a craft. So I'm very much a believer in maximum input, bring in as much as you can from as many different sources as you can. I actually think the worst thing you can do if you're making a game set in the Forgotten Realms is read a bunch of Forgotten Realms novels, because you already have that as your base, so you want to bring something new to it, something different. I read a lot of Shakespeare because I'm that guy, so you'll notice bits of that. A couple of us are big Shakespeare people, we're writers. But reading outside of fantasy, it's like, you can get stuck in a rut, I think, if you stick within your genre. So if you play through Baldur's Gate 3, I think you can see, there's a lot of different subgenres in there. We try to lean into horror at times, comedy, romance, tragedy. And if you you can become too vanilla, kind of, I think if all your input is the same. So I'm actually more inspired by films than books a lot of the time as well. Like, I think very visually, he would disagree with that. but a lot of the cinematic influence. So like, I can't be. People ask me afterwards if you want to talk about my film list, because I've got a lot of things. Yeah, a lot of sci-fi, a lot of horror, actually, leaning away from just reading fantasy.
So the next question is from Brimstone. It says, what new avenues were opened up from the upgrades to the Divinity engine from 2.0 to 4.0? Were there things that you wanted to do in DOS 2's Divinity engine that couldn't be done due to engine limitations, and that informed the upgrades for Divinity Engine 4?
Oh, there were many upgrades, right? So I think that the interesting thing is the things that we still carried over. There's code in there which I wrote back in '98, which is really bad code that should not be in the game anymore. That's still in there, and wow. To this date, they still can't get rid of it for some stupid reason. No, I mean visually it got a lot better. Streaming was a very big thing that was added to it. for better or for worse, the opinions are divided. There were some new scripting systems that were introduced. So Nick got a lot of power in how you could set up your system rules, I mean, eventually.
Yeah, it's what Sven mentioned with the spells, the fact that most D&D spells have some twist to it. That twist means that some designer somewhere needs to define how it will work everywhere. So you take something like Chill Touch, and it's like a normal damage spell, and then at the end it says like, oh, by the way, you cannot heal, all right? And it's like, oh my god, how are we gonna make it? So we did empower designers quite a bit to create very custom things on the fly, both for the player spells and items, but also for the combats, the encounters, the kind of things that the player has to go up against. Without those tools, I don't think it would be possible to make a game as diverse as BG3, so really happy about that.
I would also like to make a shout out to our game graphics team, because without them we couldn't have made like the game that would look so well. And yeah, if you have seen some of the early prototypes that we've shown, yeah, I mean the lighting, the materials, skin definition, like a lot was done with the help of the Great Programmers Now team.
This was also the, sorry. Also a shout out to the DevOps team, actually. We didn't have a DevOps team when we started on BG3, but we built it throughout. DevOps is basically people that support developers with special tools and processes. And they did a lot of automation for us, without which it would have been completely impossible to finish BG3. As a matter of fact, the end of development, it was for a large part, well not large part, but it was consisted of just keeping on buying new computers and servers and servers and servers just to be able to do more and more and more tests as the game was trying to test itself automatically. I mean, like, so without that it would have been completely impossible, because you have to realize whenever you did 170 hours, 180 hours of cinematics, something like that.
Around that, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so somebody had to watch these things, and as they were, because they broke down the entire time, because there was always something that went wrong. There was moments, actually months before release, everything was black. You remember the big lighting disaster of 2023?
Yes, and that's another big thing is like every second of this footage has to be watched, but it doesn't have to only be watched once. It has to be watched over the numerous iterations that the scenes have, and it also has to be watched when there's, you know, a random change is made in the engine that breaks everything, like the screen just going black. We have to be checking constantly throughout the process of making the game.
That's a lot of bear sex. So much. The next question is for Nick from Brahman. Have you ever had to clash with the creatives and tell them that their outlandish ideas were going to sink the project and lead to its demise? And were there ever any moments where you had to concede and let the developers cook?
Is that today or ever?
Just in the last half an hour.
Well, it's really, I would say, the opposite. Whatever idea or feature we work on, we want to make sure that it has at least a modest chance to bring down the whole project. Because, well, like, you play a lot of games, a lot of really good games are coming out, right? So all of the easy things have been done. Everything good that's left has some risk. There's always some creative risk, and so for us it's a matter of managing that creative risk and sometimes making sure that we take enough risks because we want to keep you guessing. Like, hey, you can turn into a bear, but can you climb on the ladder? Can you talk to other animals? Why is it always bears? I don't know. We want, when we describe a feature, we want the player to go like, are they really doing this? I have to try it, right? Are they really gonna do it? Can I really throw the final boss? Well, not the final, but can I really throw Gartash off the cliff with teleportation? I'll check it. So it's we rely on our designers and everybody in the team actually to continuously generate something like, hey, let's do something crazy here.
This question continues actually and says, in that vein, how important is it to build trust and understanding between you and the development staff, and how do you build the kind of relationships that are necessary to create this kind of game?
I would say that at Larian we try to keep things relatively flat as an organization. So each individual designer is really the owner of their thing. So somebody working on a feature, even if it's like a feature like digging for treasure, for example, they are really the creative director of that feature, right? So we try to make sure that there's ownership, and it's that designer deciding what should happen, what is the best for this feature, for their idea, and it brings out a lot of energy from people, a lot of excitement to work on this.
The next question is for Mavis from Sabe. Hello. As the certified #1 Halcyon lover, I want to ask Matt Davis specifically, what was your reaction when the idea or brief was given to you? Were you given any context behind it? Did they just drop it on you like, oh yeah, you're going to have to animate a suggestive smirk on a bear? Or did they try and ease you into it? How long did you spend on it? And also, do you take private commit? I'm taken out by a sniper rifle before I can finish the question. RIP to that person.
So I would say it was mostly probably just dropped on me with not a lot of hullabaloo or anything. I was kind of just, I got the scene, it was assigned to me, I started looking at the dialogue file, I was like, oh, this is a steamy scene with Halcyon. And then I was like, oh, there's a few options here. Okay. And so I was like, how do I do this? This is so I kind of just started piecing things together, just ideas, and kind of just started building it out, and it was starting to come together like relatively quickly, like that part of the sequence. There's actually a lot more work went into the non-bear romance part of that dialogue. There was, a lot of work had to be done in that, but yeah, I pieced together the bear side of it, and I don't think anyone really had seen it too much, like outside of maybe my direct lead. And then I think it was you two were in the Dublin office one day, and the office we were in at the time, my desk is like right next to the kitchen, so
I was going to go get a coffee, and I saw things that I did not expect to see.
Yeah. So like, I'd been working on it for so long, you kind of get numb to it almost, and people just walk by the desk and they're just like, what are you doing? Like, oh, yeah. This is my life.
Well, I saw the squirrel, dropping the acorn, and I was like, what is this scene? Oh, it's that.
Yeah. The same reaction when I saw the squirrel. We don't have a squirrel scene.
Yeah. I mean,
but that
speaking
was
of nobody's seen it.
That was part of the, that was the ending of the sequence, because we wanted to, that was for that part of the sequence, like the bear version. The squirrel was, I think, the only custom work we did for that sequence, because we wanted it to, it's like, this is very comedic. We need kind of a slapstick sort of ending to this. So I remember having a discussion with Graham, my lead, and Chad, our lead animator, and I was like, we gotta do something with this squirrel, because we had in the script, it was like a squirrel appears and runs off into the brush, and we just kind of workshopped it and came up with the idea of the nut. And Chad as a lead doesn't get to animate very often, but he was like, I will do it right now. And he ran to his desk, and we had that animation done within like a day or two. So it came together very quickly in the end.
But yeah, you guys think that nobody sees the work in progress shots, but like we have spies, and then those spies, they like just take this like very raw block out white box of the scene, and then they just PM to everyone. It's like, have you seen this? So we've seen it.
Yeah, once word got out of that scene, it kind of did the rounds around the Larian Slack channel anyway.
All right, and then I guess the final is just a sort of general question that Discord quite enjoyed asking. How did Larian handle the huge company growth? How does Larian avoid layoffs? And how do you maintain the small studio energy / culture? Basically, advice for smaller studios starting up in the current environment. It's a lot of questions in one, I'll grant you.
So, I mean, we have multiple studios across the world, so that helps. So each studio is not too large. So I think that's probably the first step. So whenever you step in one studio, it always feels like a smaller studio rather than one large studio. So I think that's a very big thing. we, especially in the last year and a half, last couple of years of BG3, we spent a lot of time reviewing the game, and so everybody watched the same streams when people were talking about it. It's very, what Nick said, is very flat, right? So anybody could give feedback and people would react to it right away. So I think that if you can figure out ways where people can engage directly and say, like, well, I think this is what should be happening, and there's that discussion, and there's engagement, and sometimes it steers the game in a certain direction, you will manage to keep that feeling, I think. It's obviously not easy because we also are learning what it means to be a larger company. I mean, like we're game developers, so we're not managers per se. So it was interesting to see how we grew, but you adapt as you go. I think the thing that unites us all is that what Alena said, you're making something for a player and you want the player to have fun, and as long as we put that in front of us, I think we will stay as we were, hopefully. Yeah.
Can I just add one thing? Because we recently met up, a lot of us in Barcelona, to talk about future plans and what we're doing now. And so we had all these really brilliant people talking about what their departments were doing, and it was really cool. But the thing that stood out to me the most was actually something David Walgrave said, who is, how long's David been at Larian now?
He doesn't want his age to be known.
Yeah. He's 22.
Very long.
And at some point, he's a producer. He's talking about production realities. He's talking about all this stuff, which can be quite dry. And there was a point when he said that he was walking around the office recently, and he said, I saw a bunch of developers gather around a screen getting excited, and that's what game development will always be, no matter how big you are, no matter how small you are. And that's true.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of small announcements that we're going to make at the end of the panel, but I think for the next, just to make sure we get through as many people as we can, if we can throw it over to some audience questions now, would that be possible? People who are responsible for running the lovely floor. There's a microphone there, and there's a microphone there. Form an orderly queue, and we'll try and get through as many of you as we possibly can. Hello.
Hi. Huge fan. Logged over like 500 hours. I know one big example with story changes is I know you guys made a lot of changes with Will's story between early access and full release. But were there any other major story beats, maybe with other characters or arcs, that wound up getting changed?
Yeah, yes. Quite a few. Yeah. I mean, so one of the, I'll be quick on this, but there was a lot of stuff where we need real estate to tell the stories. So as you move through the game, the companions particularly, you need to find the place where you can tell their story, where it's not stepping on the toes of the main story or another companion story. So we did have a bunch of different locations planned where we could tell some of those companion stories, and it slowed the game down. It didn't feel right. So they end up, a lot of them happening in the city. So you get a lot of those stories resolving in the city. But like with, like Karlak changed a lot because we had Karlak as an NPC in early access. We didn't know the full story there. And actually, once we kind of landed on the heart and the Infernal Engine, it started to come together. And then one of our principal writers, Sarah Bayless, picked up the character and ran with it and made it into something that we didn't imagine. You know, she just created something with it. But there was a lot that just, you hear the phrase cut content a lot. The content wasn't cut. We never finished it because there was a point when we realized this isn't telling the stories we need to tell it. But there was a lot of stuff that didn't make it in, yeah.
Thank you very much.
And you can find me afterwards and we can talk in more detail. I like talking about this stuff.
You've spoken a lot about how you've responded in a positive or active way towards player feedback. Can you tell us about a time when you thought, no, it's the fans who are wrong?
Yes, many times. So I think there were there were a lot of requests. Like recently, we see that people want us to keep on making changes, and so and we could do that, but then we would never make something new. And at some point, you have to accept as a developer, like, I finished my work on this game, I will move on to the next thing. Just like you finished your work on a movie, you're not going to change the movie post factum. And so I think that sometimes when I see people who get really engaged and really care about the game, and which we really appreciate, by the way, asking for changes, and where I say, well, you know, at this point, we're not going to do that anymore, because we need to have closure, and otherwise we can't create new things. And sometimes that's hard to let go, especially if you care really, really hard about something. So I think that would be the one that springs to mind right away.
Thank you. Hiya.
Hi, I have a narrative question. So how do you balance developing like cohesive storylines and like player choice? And then secondly, could you estimate like how many different endings there would be? Like,
there was a number that was going around about the number of endings, and it looks at the different variations. That's tricky to answer. In terms of balancing it, I mean, it's the same as actually what everyone else would say about this, I think, at Larian. If it feels like it would be cool for the player to do something, then you've got to let them do it, which is how we end up in a lot of trouble when we're like, oh God, how do we get back to the main story here? You know, so we have to make sure that we're able to do that and guide it back again. So there are points where the game kind of cinches itself in and says, okay, we're going to slow down. I call it here's the science bit, if anyone remembers those adverts. It's a UK thing. But the points when it just says, okay, I just need to make sure you're on track. But we try to avoid them. Really, it is about saying we have a story we want to tell you, but we want you to be able to engage with it in the way that it feels most fun to you. And it does mean that sometimes you've written a dialogue, you think it's really good. Sometimes the cinematics team have done their work on it. Then someone walks past as you're testing it and says, why can't you do that thing in this? And you go, fuck. And you go back to the beginning and you start again because they're right. I don't know if that answered the question fully, but yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. I'm in love with the characters and their stories, and I was wondering if y'all are like open to or have plans to expand or continue their stories in the form of like a book or graphic novels.
No. No, and the answer to that is that those rights lie with Wizards of the Coast now when it comes to books and graphic novels. So that's a question for them.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
And I don't think they're here.
Hi.
Hello. Were there any lessons you learned from making Divinity 1 and 2 that you were able to carry into making Baldur's Gate 3 and making it a better and maybe more cohesive and structured game?
Yes, many. Really, a lot. I think what Adam was just hinting at, the way that you respect agency and still manage to tell the story, we got better at that, and I think we can get a lot better at it for our future games also. So that was a very big one. I think one of the biggest things that we learned, or at least that for me was a big learning, is making sure that whatever you put in a game is important all the way through and just doesn't die out in the middle of the game. So those were very big lessons. If you look at the original Sin 1, it had moments where it started dying, and you can actually see that in the average time played. And then in DOS 2, you could see that the average time played went up, and then with the BG3, you saw it really go up. So I think we did something really good there. We can still get better at it, but it is, I think those were really important lessons, and there's many, many, many more. You can ask afterwards if you want.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, so I'm a QA tester, and when I play BG3, I think this must have been super fun and also a nightmare to test because there's so many complex systems, and I just know that there's like a million ways to break those. So just for anybody that this might apply to, are there any specific bugs or bug trends that came up during development that really made you go like, oh shit, like what even is this? How do we fix this?
You want to take that one?
Well, the hardest parts were actually testing something that goes throughout the entire playthrough. Because if the game is 100 hours long, that's what, more than 2 work weeks to test that. It's fairly impossible. By the end, we were tackling it in various ways. So we had people who were speedrunning specific kind of storylines with specific choices, just to see if all of the endings line up properly. We had automated testing that was catching all kinds of technical issues as well. So it's really a mix of different techniques that you have to employ. That would be probably, the Baldur's Gate 3 would probably be impossible to just test normally. You really have to automate part of it and be smart about it.
So there were days where you'd get to work and it would be, today you are Will, you are dating Lizelle, who will defy Blackheath, and your father will die. Have fun.
You have 4 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. So one of my favorite parts of this game as a whole is that I'm usually like a dungeon master when it comes to my friends. So being able to actually play in a world instead of having to just run it was great. I'm actually curious to see, for you guys as the creators of this game, how do you guys engage with your own game? Like when you play it, do you try to do things like off-build? Do you try to do things where you want to do like the standard? I'm curious how you guys engage with your own product.
I skip all the dialogue and enjoy the combat. I am not joking.
I honestly mostly look at what playtesters are doing and what other people are doing. When you spend so much time with the game, you stop seeing it as a player. And it's very important to look at somebody experiencing it for the first time, because that's the most important part. It's like the realization, like, oh, that's how this combat goes, or oh, that's where the character is going. So for us, it was very important to organize internal playtesting and literally sit with playtesters, look at them when they're playing, and then talk to them after. It gave us a lot more insight than trying to do it yourself, because you also saw all of the previous versions of the game kind of just layering together, and you would start forgetting like what was the newest part and what was the problem you fixed last week. It starts to blur together. So it's super important to put somebody fresh next to a game and go like, what do you think?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hi there.
Hello.
I was having an argument with a friend recently, and he asked me why the sexuality in Baldur's Gate is acclaimed and beloved, while the sexuality in other games like Stellar Blade is sometimes seen by some people as controversial or distasteful. And I knew that Baldur's Gate 3 does it wonderfully, but I couldn't articulate a good response to him as to why. So I'm wondering what you did to differentiate how sexuality was portrayed in your game as opposed to how it is in other games.
You want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it was, we wanted to present people that felt authentic. So whether it was their sexuality, parts of their identity, their traumas, we wanted them to feel authentic. And I think when they feel authentic and they feel like diverse people with different problems, different attitudes, and different kinks, arousals, fetishes, whatever it might be, seriously, like, I mean, I think if they feel authentic, then people embrace them as authentic people and characters. I mean, I don't think sexuality should be controversial. I think that it's okay for things to be sexy. And I think there's a broad range of what that can mean, and I think that's fine. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with cheesecake, and there's nothing wrong with the more authentic version. But for us, it was that. It was, we present them as people, and then hopefully you go along, I was going to say on the ride with them, but you go along on the journey with them, and you're having an adventure with them, thank you, and you develop a relationship, and then hopefully it feels natural.
One of the biggest questions we continually ask ourselves when we're reviewing the game is like, is this believable? Can I believe in this? This is wider than just sexuality. It goes for every single thing in it. And it's something that we put a lot of attention to it. Most of the feedback to a writer is, I don't believe in this. Yeah. So, and then it gets redone until I believe in it. So and I think that is one of the reasons why it feels natural when you play the game.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick, one negative consequence of it is that my girlfriend almost left me for Gail. I just want to say that.
Fair, fair. Hi there.
Hi. I was just wondering, given that you've had such rapid team expansion, what's the #1 thing that you guys look for somebody who might be a future team member or who's applying for your studio?
Bring us something we don't have.
Yeah, that's a good.
Like a lot of people are applying, I won't lie, but we know areas where we're missing, and if you can come and point out, like, hey guys, your stuff is kind of not great, and here's how I will make it amazing. Sure, let's talk. Tell us about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. We've maybe got time for, let's say, one more on each side, if that's cool. Hi there.
Hi. I just wanted to ask about your design process when changing rules from original 5th edition, because there's a lot of stuff that you mentioned earlier about like implementing homebrew rules, but also there are some things that were removed or changed because they're kind of too complex for a video game. Like like the spell suggestion wasn't present, which is one of my favorite to play, but one of my least favorite to DM. And I was just wondering like what your design process was with that, with changing them or removing them, and if there's any you regretted doing that for.
It was absolutely agonizing, right? When we got to divine intervention and it says like, yeah, you can ask for anything. What do you want? I mean, we can't just let you email us what you want and then patch it later, right? So we had to try to pick our battles. So we tried to do our best within kind of the limitations of the possible within the video game. And then sometimes some humor also helps, right? Like we pick the animals that are kind of funny to turn into. And so you maybe give us some credit despite us not letting you turn into every single animal that you could possibly think of, right?
Thank you. Final question.
So thank you for making a great game, and also very much thank you for the upcoming official modding support. That being said, is there any things that you might be looking forward to, like basically like seeing if a person makes a mod for something, like something that you'd be like, I hope they make this.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
What are there any particular mods that you're excited to see, or like?
Oh, like this.
Styles.
So we're going to be. This is actually a good moment to. So our next patch, patch 7, is coming out next week. So featuring a lot of modding support, and in the context of that, we are going to be putting a lot of attention on the modding community that's been helping us in the mods that we can officially support. So our goal is to do cross-platform modding support, which is not the easiest thing in the world because we have to make it work on console and on PC. We'll start with the PC version. The console version will come a bit later because it has to go through a bunch of submission processes. Also gives us the time to see whatever goes wrong and fix it so that we get it in time for console. And so if you will watch our channels, you will see Eva actually spend a lot of time with modders and looking at mods.
I'm going to be doing a lot of that, yeah. I'm very, very excited to play what everyone comes up with. Yeah, thank you so much. So well, that was a tease of one of the little things that we wanted to chat about at the end, but is there anything else you'd like to say?
There's 2 more things, so other than patch 7. So we have a great community. It's been really fantastic for all of us, and you have no idea how grateful we are for all the feedback and support that you've given. We watch a lot of streams, we watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's one streamer who's in the audience here today. I can see her react.
We can see you.
And so she did some fantastic streams where she really pushed the game to the limit. She did one particular scene which was incredibly impressive, where she was about to die. She was pretending to play in hardcore mode. She was in the Forge in the Underdark. And so she had one character that was left alive, and so she had nothing left. She could only throw stuff, and she had a firebolt, that she could still do. And so she reasoned correctly that if she were to shoot at a lever, it would kill her and it would kill the boss. But she had a potion that was going to be crushed, and that potion was going to revive her, and so she was going to survive. And so when she did that, we all looked at each other and said, wow, that's so amazing. Now, the reason why I mentioned this is just to introduce Luality, but also it's her birthday today, and so we wanted to wish her a happy birthday. You can stand up, Luality, so just greet everybody. There you go. And so then finally also a shout out. This is the last panel that we have a birthday cake, by the way.
We don't have firebolts, so we can't light the candles, but there it is.
And so this is our final panel. This is, for us, the closure of what has been a hectic and an incredible year for Baldur's Gate 3. We're obviously still doing a few updates, but for when it comes to us talking about Baldur's Gate 3, we want to go back to our cave. So we're going to go back to the cave. The armor is going to go on the wall. And so we're going to focus a little bit on our next game. But before we do that, I wanted to give a shout out to our entire team. Over 2,000 people worked on Baldur's Gate 3, going from performance actors to artists, riggers, and so forth. I ran out of time. So big shout out to the entire team. And all, indeed, I got the wrap it up signal. And all of our community. You guys have been amazing. I hope you'll see us here back in a few years when we have something new to show you. But now we need some time to go and work on it, actually. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
All of it.
See you on the next